architecture, digital software tutorials website. Have you guys seen that page? Do you know that page? Steve sent out a link, I think, or Leon, I think, might have sent out a link earlier. So if you haven't seen it, look for that link or look for that email or ask a friend, because it seems like some people have seen it. So this is just a drawing I started. It is a project by Zaha Hadid called LF1, so I'll just show you that real quick. Cool project, kind of a, I would say a little bit of a groundbreaking project in the sense that it's one of her first built works, so she got a lot of flack early on for just being a bit of a artist and what have you, but okay, that's not a great, hey, wait, does this have project images? I shouldn't be so quick to, no. ArcData is usually a good, but that's not, sorry. But maybe we'll just go to images, let's see what we get there, yeah. So it's an early project, probably early 2000s, and you can see the architecture of it is this kind of landscape form that swirls up and has a, her kind of signature swoopy design, and then you kind of walk, flow through it from one side to the other. So that's kind of an entry into it, and there's spaces below. I quite forget actually what its function is, but anyway, kind of a cool.
We were looking at the drawings last week.
Oh, okay, so you guys are familiar with it. I don't need to go through all this. Great.
It was a fire station.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a fire station, but I look at it and I'm like, that's not a fire station. But yep, in fact, that's a fire station.
Yeah.
So this is my AutoCAD interface. So basically, I'll just quickly show you what I'm going to do, and then I'll walk you more specifically through the process. So first thing I'm going to do, and so I'm also using a new laptop here from the school, so this is great because we have one now, working at the bugs, one of which is this massive command line, so we'll work on that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little, I'm going to make a small rectangle and this is in inches, and I'll show you at 17 inches, 11 inches. And I'm gonna, God, this is annoying. Let me see if I can just drag this out of the way a little bit. I'm gonna basically just scale this. So I'm gonna see what it would look like at 1 to 1/8 scale on 11 by 17. So just type in scale. So basically what I'm doing is I'm making a sheet of paper at full scale, and then I'm scaling it by a factor of 12 times 8, which would be 96. So that's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper at 1/8 scale. So that's a little too small, so we'll try 1/16. Anyone want to do math for me? 16 times 12, I think it's 192. So I'll undo that. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm making a frame that will stay in one place, so I can always have the same thing show up each time. All right, well, we'll work with that for now. We'll perfect that a little later. Wow, this, I wonder if, okay, I'm just gonna live with it. So next I'm gonna say print, and I set up what's called a pen table here, a CTV file. I'll show you in a second how to do that. And I'm actually, you can go to previous plot, which I think it was, remember. So my printer is Adobe PDF, my paper size 11 by 17. I'm going to change this to 192. Do you follow how that works, the 92? So if it's 1/4 scale, it would be 1 to 48. Because the units of the file are in inches. There's 12 inches in a foot, 1/16. Okay, so it always kind of confused me a little bit. But so I'm going to plot area window. So this is just a quick and dirty way. You can use paper space as well if you're familiar with that. We'll see if we have time to get into that. So, and then I can just preview, and I'll just say okay. And so I can kind of see what this is going to look like. I'll develop the drawing further here. So I'm okay with that. So I'm going to plot it. So it's just going to be a partial plan, and I'll just leave the title like that for now because I'm not being super rigorous. Maybe I should be a little more rigorous about this. Let's just say LF1 plan. So we'll save that. Thank you. So that's now saved. We'll close all the tabs. So I'll go to Illustrator. I'll start a new file. And I'm using AutoCAD 2015. So that's a little bit of why the interface is so messed up, because the computer is more advanced than the software platform. So the driver, so if I was using 2017 or 2018, it'd be fine, but 2015 or 2014 is what is in the machines upstairs. So this is the closest compatibility I can download. So these all settings are good for me. Is that right? No, I want that to be the other orientation. I want it to be 17 horizontal. Well, can I just do that? Yeah, all right. 11 height. That's fine. Create. And so this is where the magic happens. You have now 11 by 17 sheet of paper in Illustrator. You can go to wherever you saved your print, so LF1 plan. You just drag it in, and there it is in your file. And then a lot of times it comes in on that portrait orientation. You can just rotate. You get, like, if you don't know how to do that. So I select the artwork. I float my mouse down. You see how it's gotten that little arc? So if I rotate it like that, it's like freeform. If I hold the shift key down, then it just does in 90-degree intervals. And then this will basically snap to the edges of the paper pretty easily. I'm using a PC, so a lot of the same commands apply for the Mac. You guys can hear me okay too? Yeah, and yeah, feel free to jump in with questions.
Find out, how did you, so like say in my CAD, I have like all these colored lines.
Yep.
How do they go into this black and white? Or
They become, yeah, that's the CTB. That's the magic of the CTB file. It's called a pen file. So it's essentially, for each color, you're assigning a line weight.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and show you that. I'm just showing you the kind of immediate workflow first, and then I'll go through the steps a little more. But that's a great question. So I'm just going to go to my layers. And so if you don't know Illustrator super well, I mean, we did a little bit of an Illustrator intro, I think, in B1. So I'm kind of assuming a little bit of familiarity with the program. How many people have used Illustrator at all? A little bit. Okay, so you have some familiarity with the interface. I may not need to go into that. So you know layers. So I'm going to call that PDF. I'm going to lock it. So then I just don't touch that layer. It's pretty good. And then I can create a new layer on top of it and say I wanted to hatch a region. I would find my pen tool, which I always have a hard time finding. Give it a color of some kind. I can get rid of that. And obviously this isn't useful for anything. I'm just making a shape here, and it may seem at first glance a little tedious to actually trace out things, but like when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, that's kind of, but it actually isn't so bad. Just trust me on that. I have no other way of convincing you of that. So, and then I'll just say multiply opacity, multiply, and then I can see the line weights behind that. And so you can do, and I'll come back and do all sorts of other stuff, but with this at time permitting. But say now I'll show you kind of interesting thing here. So I developed this drawing further already, so but maybe I'll just show you a few things with how I did do that. So you can see here I'm starting to develop walls off this. So I just called them 6 inches off the center line. And important thing, I mean, use grid lines in your drawings. They really help give texture and they help organize. So I kind of made these up, but I've seen working drawings of the building and they're pretty impressive. I couldn't find them in time for this demonstration, but so I just offset those lines. So that's the offset command, O or OFF. And some of those commands are written here, which I'll maybe go through a bit of them after this kind of workflow, just to make sure we hit all of them. A couple of things that I like to do, and now the machines upstairs, I don't know if you customize it, and I don't think if you customize, I think every time you log off, if you do any interface customization, you lose it. I don't know if there's a way to save a profile. But if on your own machines, this is stuff you can do and have it stay. So I usually well, first I'll just show you the update magic. So I'm just going to match properties. If you don't know that command, it's MA. And again, I apologize for the icons. That's a paintbrush. Wow, this is kind of like surgery. Scalpel, please. Wow, yeah. I just could keep hitting. All right. So anyway, I made a line there, or I started to make a wall there, and this is kind of a typical way to build up a good AutoCAD drawing. I just need to offset.
So you're working in both Illustrator and CAD at the same time?
I'm working. That's exactly right. And so what's nice about this is I can, make changes in AutoCAD and then come back to Illustrator and say, look at it and say, do I like that? Do I not? And then I kind of go back and forth. So, it may not be the ideal workflow for you. Try it out, see how it works. But I've used it for years. It's treated me well. So I'm just going to match properties. So the crossing window, if I cross from bottom to top, I select anything in that window. If I cross that way, I'm not going to select anything in that window. That's only to select a very specific item. So I'll just match properties in that guy too. And I'll come back and clean it, and I'll show you the workflow for cleaning that up. But that just gives a little more texture to what we're looking at. I will then go through the printing again. So all I have to do is just say previous plot. Everything's all the same. I usually preview anyway. All right, I'm just going to say okay. So that I can see that's updated. I plot it. I had closed it before. I'm just going to overwrite that. And I'm going to turn the volume down. Is that mute? That's mute. Okay. Anyway, so that's updated. So now if I flip back to Illustrator, it'll just say, oh, we updated that. And then everything will update. Pretty neat. So then just, so you get the basic gist then, right? And that's basically the crux of the tutorial. You asked about the CTB file. Or about how the magic happens, right, of this going to the pen weights. So when I go to print, you'll see here plot style. So actually, the default print screen is going to look like that. So there's a little arrow down here which will give you more options, which gives you the interface for the CTB file. Again, the icons on this are really screwy. This will be much bigger in your lab machine. So if I want to edit that, and you'll also see the default will be none. So if you want to make a new one, you go down and say new. This is fine, whatever CFG file. Give it a name, so I'll call it LF1. And then you can, wait, why is it? Try this again. New, use that. Oh, start from scratch. Sorry, don't use a config file. Start from scratch. That's what we want to do. LF1, next. Use this for the current drawing. Finish. And then I can hit that button again, and it's going to let me to start to edit this. So this is where I link. Are you with me still? Okay. This is where I start to link all the colors to line weights. So what I usually do, I usually only need these 9 colors here, not much more than that. So the first thing I can do is I can change all of them to black. So this is just basically telling me what the printer, essentially, the printer driver is going to be coloring the ink. And then what I can do is I can assign a line type to each color if I wanted. I don't want to do that. I want to do line types by layer. But the basic one that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the line weights of these guys. And I'm going to do those by individual color. And I gave you a I did not give you this. Did I give you this? Yes. No. Yeah. Sort of. So I gave you colors and I gave you pen weights on this chart. So the first color I gave you here is white, which is actually black in the interface. And so I select the color and I go to the line weight, and I'm going to call that 0.18. So, and I know you guys have kind of been doing that. So what you cut? So the line weight, the pen weights are basically based on we used to draft with ink, and those are like the kind of diameter of the little nozzles that the ink came out of, or the tips that they came out of. So dark gray, I'm going to use as a very light line. So that's like the grid lines, and so that's going to be a 0.13. So this is a kind of range that's worked for me typically, but I try not to use like a whole slew of line weights. I try to use maybe 5 at the max, because after that it gets a little confusing. So sometimes the different colors might have the same line weight, but they will the different colors helps me separate different types of objects. So it's using the layers in multiple ways. So 0.45, so red is going to be almost my heaviest. So I'm gonna be using that for my walls and such, or cut lines. I'm also I can see yellow is also that 0.45, which is pretty heavy. And you can bump that up. I mean, this is just a kind of starting point, you know. But when Leon sits down and looks at your drawing and says, like, dude, your line weights are like completely whack, how do you know? This is a way that you can go back and say, all right, well, I'm gonna try and adjust that. And for some reason, so blue I'm gonna use as like if I really just want to blast the heck out of a line. So like the ground plane or something like that. 0.6, it's pretty heavy.
James?
Yes.
Do you not worry about line weights in layers properties then? Because you use your pen table?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yep.
This is a bit more streamlined of a way of doing it? Or?
I find it streamlined because you're thinking less. You're setting it up at the beginning, and then you're going from there. So yeah, this is just my workflow. All right, so I'm gonna say, so the other thing that's kind of neat then is these. So everything else, so if I was to draft in this color 242, it would print in 242. I usually use these colors 250 to 255. I leave those colors and I'll use those for like hatches. So I'll show you that as well. If I want to hatch in AutoCAD. All right, so we'll save that. So I'm using that now as my pen table. I'm going to just go back to previous plot, which will give me all the settings I had before, and then I will go to my new pen table. So now one of the things that you'll see is you'll want to find out where that pen table is, because that pen table may get erased every time you log off the machine. So you might want to have that on a thumb drive, so you can, or on your Google Drive, so you can just drag it in. And what you can do is to get it in there, so you can what I usually do is I will go to let's see if I can remember this. There's a folder. Whoops. This is going to be one of those pauses. Let's see if I can. It's been a while. There's basically a folder where I can dump those CTB files, and I'm not finding it right now. Options. No, it's not going to be an options, but I'll try that anyway. Well, no. I'll come back to that, and I'll send out the file path for it. I mean, I think I can actually, let's just try something here. I will see if I can just browse to it really quick. So this PC, Windows, program files, Autodesk. I'll try this one more time. Nothing there. DLL files, setup. This is not what I'm looking for. So let's try program files here, Autodesk, ACAD 2015. Yeah, this might give us support. Plugins, setup shaders. All right, I'll find the path for you. So, but those guys live somewhere. So, some things you can do with your AutoCAD file. So does that make sense though, the pen tables thing? So I'll just print this really quick so we can see the line weight update. And I could probably make those dash lines a little lighter. So in my layers, so this is, and again the icons here are really kind of screwed up. So I made 2 layers already. So if I make a new layer, which I believe is here, it would be bigger in life. Then it gives me a new layer, and so I have 0 grid wall. I will say we'll do edge. We'll do edge. The 2 is that's from another tutorial. I could even just say door. I usually like to name layers. I'll do edge with 4 letters max. So maybe I'll just go and I'll just and if you're really into the whole layer thing, you can go to like the AIA website and they'll give you like highly specific layers. So you just pick your properties. So you change the color of that layer. Edge, what do I have here? I have a green, so that's a kind of medium line weight. If I wanted to have I'd say, well, I'll do an overhead layer. So, because that will have a dash line to it. So, overhead. And the four letter thing just helps me scan real quick, so I'm not like my brain works less doing that way. So you notice I'm not touching any of these things here, but I'm going to change the line weight or line type. So right now I have center line loaded. I'm going to load a different line type. I'm going to do dash, long dash in here. Dash, let's see, dash times 2. We'll just do a long dash. We'll say dashed. That looks kind of long. And then I will say OK to make that the line type for that layer. So I'll close this. Oh, that was new. I don't need that. So I'm just going to delete you. All right, now I'm going to close this window. Oh, I didn't give overhead a color, did I? What color do I have that as? I have that as white, so I kind of lucked out there, I think. Oh no, that made it green. So I'm going to make that white. All right. So another thing I like to do just with my drafting settings is I like having the cursor being nice and large, so I can do a few things. So with this display the crosshair size, I usually crank that to 100, so it covers the whole screen. It just helps with alignment. I also let's see, they have user preferences, right-click customization. So I will usually say repeat last command for right-click. It just makes a faster workflow. Repeat last command, and if command is in progress, enter. Otherwise, when you're right-clicking, it's going to give you a menu, and it's like one extra mouse click. So those are kind of 2 basic adjustments that I'll make to the interface. So I just like that because I can, again, align things more easily. Oh, and then one thing I'm going to do, I didn't like how dark the those grid lines were, so I'm actually going to bump those down a bit. Do I want to be extreme? We'll try that. We'll see what that does. Previous plot. Say okay. Say whoop. Okay. I gotta close that. Yes. Close that. Illustrator. Yes. Huh. That's odd. Should make those lighter. Something is awry. Pen table, shape plot, previous plot, Adobe PDF. Why? Because that didn't.
Oh, you're in the test CTV, not the
That. Oh yeah, thank you. See, someone's paying attention. I like that. All right, now let's preview that. Oh yeah, that's much better. I mean, it's pretty extreme, right, Leon? But you okay with those line weights? Well,
No, it's okay. I mean, just for, so we get the, not for the drawing.
we're gonna have to coordinate this next time.
Yeah.
A little better.
What's the maximum line thickness
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
11 by 7?
Yeah. See, I'm more of a heavy duty kind of person with the drawings. Anyway, so yeah, so you can see how that updates. I'm gonna bring in a file and so I'll do one thing here, another little neat trick. So I can I want to copy this rectangle in the same place in my next file. So I'm gonna just say what do I do? Control Shift C. So let's copy with a base point, and then I just say 0, 0, 0. Whoop. And so now that's in the memory of the computer. And then I'm gonna open. This was one that is just a little more developed. And then I'm gonna Control V that, and then just say 0, 0, 0. And it's going to show up in the same place. So now every time I print this, it's going to be the same exact thing. The other thing I'm going to do is add the def points layer. So that's a good layer to have because it's invisible. So you can see it, and a lot of times it's this weird 111 color. But by default, AutoCAD will not print that layer. And I'm just going to move that rectangle to that layer. Oop. So a few things I can do is I'm just going to turn that layer back on. Escape. Let's see, what are some things I want to show you? So I'll show you how to hatch the rest of this guy first. So one of the things you can do, I'm going to turn on all the layers because a lot of times when you hatch, you're going to have a bunch of layers on. And just so you can see, the way I did this drawing was I just built it up from a JPEG that I brought in. Do you guys know how to bring JPEGs in? So I don't need to go through that. So one thing I can do, a quick thing, is I can isolate layers. So I just want to hatch the walls. So I'm going to come in, it's a little bit of a, again, surgical procedure here because of the displays, but I just want to isolate that layer. What the hell happened? All right, I'm just going to turn this guy off first. So I'm going to isolate you, enter. No, it hasn't been isolated. Unisolate. Wow. So what's supposed to happen is that this layer is supposed to only be visible once I isolate that. Let's see. Let's try that again. Lock. Is there a lock on some of these layers? What is going on? Oh, the layer is locked. I locked that layer because I was hatching it. Sorry. So I'm just going to unlock all these layers. Maybe that's why I can't isolate it. I don't know why those layers are locked. Let's try that again. No. All right. Well, in theory, that guy is supposed to be isolated. I'm gonna just do something here. Am I gonna start this over? Turn this off? Well, no, I'll come back to that. So really what that's supposed to do, it's supposed to be a quick way of just turning off turning.
They're still locked.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right, they're totally still locked. Layer properties. Unlocked. Those are unlocked, right? I'm not making this up. Okay. So now what happens if I turn you on? Okay. Turning that on. Turning hatch on. They're not locked. Try this one more time. No. What it's doing is it's locking instead of, that's what it's doing, is it's locking all the other layers instead of, so it's supposed to undo the visibility of them as well. So somehow that command, which I've never seen happen, hides or locks all layers. It must be my right click. Let me just do something here. I'm going to pick that. I'm just going to read the command line. What is the command line? To be isolated. Okay. Those are the objects to be isolated.
Maybe go in your settings when you isolate.
Go in my settings?
Well, you can type S when you...
Right.
And then maybe it's
Thanks,
on
yeah.
lock instead of hiding.
Alright, let's try that. So let's go to here, settings, lock and isolated off. Okay. Thank you, Sam. So I had to go into the settings and change the settings. So that's what it's supposed to do. It just isolates those guys. So now, but I do want to turn my hatch layer back on. And I'm going to hatch these guys. So you can see that this is, when I go over it, it's highlighted as a total polyline. But say you had constructed that out of scratch. So it's maybe a bunch of individual lines. So if you want to, and actually I'll isolate this again. If you want to convert all these guys to polylines, so you can just pick them to hatch them, you just type PE, and you then select multiple, and you just select all those guys. Right click, it'll ask you to convert to arcs and lines, say yes, say join, say fuzz distance is 0, 0, that's fine. You just keep hitting enter through it, and now this guy is joined as a polyline. So that's kind of a easy way to do that. And then if I want to hatch that, I'll make my hatch layer current. So I set that up. And when I did my hatch layer, you'll see that the color for that is 254. So that's one of those gray colors. And so I'm going to hatch. I'm going to select objects. And so if I select that guy, and maybe some of these columns, we'll just see what that does. Alright, it's not hatching great. So there's maybe a bit of a problem down there. Maybe I won't hatch the columns at the same time. We'll try this again. I can try picking an internal point too, because sometimes that works. So this is really jumping around. But it sometimes takes a while for it to calculate, and if the line is off the screen, or if the region is off the screen, it gets a little funky. Yep, now I froze. So, any questions so far?
How well do the
Oh,
magnets
that worked.
scale based on paper size?
You just kind of.
Is there a way to, like, is there like a half size?
Oh, you can scale the line weights with your printing as well. Yep. Yeah. Let me see.
Are they listed best for 11 by 17, or are they more for full size? Like,
The line weights I gave you are so here, I'm just going to show you. So this hatched in this funny pattern here, so I can just change the pattern to solid. Oh, it locked the layer before, so I'm gonna have to unlock that layer. Under layer properties, just gonna unlock all my layers. Yeah, I don't usually scale the line weights, but yeah, you can do that. I'll see if we can see the dialogue. So that's now hatched. I'll just go in and hatch the rest of these guys. Can't even read this, it's so big. Select objects. Yeah, so now it's just hatching bit by bit. I should just change my thing there. So as I just pick these guys, it's hatching them. That's great. Really happy that this is working out. Okay. Oh, that didn't work out. No, come back to you. And so that's all hatched. Why didn't you work? Let's see. Let's explode you. And let's p-edit you. And we'll just do this again. Multiple. M for multiple. And so spacebar also is enter if you're doing the command line. Convert lines, yes. And join. And fuzz distance. And we're all happy. Alright. So let's see if we can hatch this guy. Solid. No, he doesn't want to be hatched. We'll try the other method. But sometimes there might be some little thing that we'll just pick internal point. Ah, that worked. So sometimes we can do that and things are happier. So that's just giving you a nice kind of hatched. Yeah.
You were saying earlier, like I've never done it with that kind of square that you did for the paper size.
Sure.
But you can do it with your layouts also?
Yeah, you can do that in paper space. So I'll just do this one more time and then I'll show you the paper space if you want to see that. So I'm gonna just print this so we can see the update.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
Usually when you do hatches and you bring it into Illustrator, it just makes a bunch of triangles that are kind of like...
Yeah, sometimes, no, that's a good question. Sometimes go on. I'll let you finish.
I mean, I was just wondering if you had like something in relation to that, to deal with that in Illustrator. Because sometimes they even come out of the lines. So I usually don't hatch in CAD and hatch it in Illustrator.
Yeah, that can, why is my snap not working now? Yep. So Sam's question is, and we'll see, I'm just gonna escape here. We'll just accept that because that is the window that we want. So you can see here, that's a bit of a better plan. So we'll plot that. I'll just go through this step. I'll get to that question and I'll get to the next question. Just keep updating that. Yeah, you guys can deal with that. So that's the kind of updated plan. We can put the grid lines back in and we can come back to this guy. So Sam's question is sometimes when he hatches, and it's not showing up so much here, but you'll get like patches of rectangles. So I find that hatching walls in AutoCAD works just fine. Usually you don't get that kind of funny patchy rectangle thing. When you start to hatch regions, you get the patchy rectangle. So I usually do the region hatching in Illustrator.
Okay.
Yeah. There was another question, yeah.
How do you hatch in Illustrator? Like not having just a fill, but having like maybe lines or something.
Oh, patterns?
Yeah.
In my limited use of Illustrator, patterns, it's limited in the patterns it can do. You can make custom patterns, and there's like tutorials online for that. I'll show you the patterns that I have seen. If I'm using a pattern, I will often kind of, maybe sometimes I'll do dots or something like that, but I'll often revert back to AutoCAD for that. And then the other question was about paper space, right? Yeah. So I'll show you paper space. So this is model space. So it's this big, massive sheet of paper. It's actually a 3D sheet of paper in infinite space, essentially. If you draw like 10 miles out from the origin, then things start to go in an unhappy direction. But essentially, this is model space. It's a model. So I can switch to paper space, which is basically a sheet of paper, and print from there. So you can see here, this is a window. So I just hit the toggle there to switch between paper space and model space. So this is a window that basically, it's called a viewport. So it's like a window into your drawing. How many people are familiar with paper space? Okay. So what's the question then?
Well, do you just make like a normal PDF export and then you open it in?
Yeah. Any way that you could, any PDF, any way that you get a PDF out of it. Okay. So I don't need to go into paper space then. No. Yeah. No. Okay.
And then every time that you'll be changing something and you'll save it again as your PDF that you made, that's the same one, you overwrite it.
Yep.
If you open it in Illustrator, it's just automatically gonna.
Yeah, exactly. Once it's linked, so that PDF is basically your gateway between Illustrator and AutoCAD. Yeah.
If you take it into Illustrator and you find there's maybe 1 or 2 lines, the line that you don't like.
No, the sheet, it's basically a sheet of paper in Illustrator, so you can't edit that line. I mean, you can trace a line over it or something like that, but yeah. So those lines, so this line work in Illustrator is absolutely like unavailable to me. Like, yeah. So it's just a rectangle, but yeah, you could very easily trace over it. You can't delete anything. You cannot edit any of these lines in Illustrator. Like this, what you're looking at here is literally a sheet of paper on your desk. Like you cannot adjust this line in Illustrator any more than you could like change the line that you printed and taped to your desk. Does that make sense? But you can do layers over it and do whatever you want to it. Yeah.
So I mean, it's an AutoCAD line.
It's an AutoCAD line, exactly. Yeah. So there's a workflow where you can take basically you can open a DWG, so an AutoCAD file you can open directly in Illustrator and just edit as if it's Illustrator artwork, and it'll have all the layers. So if you want to work in that way, you can. I'm just not kind of going into that.
Doesn't that shrink your drawing like 5%?
Printing in AutoCAD?
No, bringing it in DWG. Sometimes I find.
Oh yeah. So when you open the DWG, it's not going to be to a scale. Yeah. I mean, there's maybe workarounds around that. Again, I've just typically don't work that way, so I can't really. There might be some online things about people who are going to show you that method, but again, this is just. I learned this in an environment where we're doing like really rapid production for competitions very quickly. Basically 2 million square feet designed in 3 months for a competition. And this was the workflow that we used, and it's worked pretty well for me. So, question about the hatching. Let's see. So there's patterns that you can use in Illustrator, and I don't use them that often, so it's going to take me. It might take me a second. Do you know where they are, Sam?
On the color, click on the green color.
Yeah.
And then the icon on the bottom left.
This guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. Yeah. So you get some default swatches. Which one would you suggest, Sam? Patterns.
Yes, you can go there.
Basic graphics. So basic graphic dots. So then you can pick some dots.
Then you can edit them too.
Yeah. You can edit them. So how do you edit them, Sam?
You can close that window.
Yeah.
Go into object.
Yeah.
Pattern.
See, this
Edit
is good.
pattern.
Edit pattern. Oh, and then I can.
Yeah, I'm not really good with editing patterns.
Yeah, it's a bit of a.
It's a little bit of a nightmare sometimes.
Yeah.
But
So let's see what happens if I type 0.1. Whoop. 0.1. Numbers locked. 0.1.
You're
So that
gonna
just
have
changes
to
the
play
window.
around too to scale them. You have to play around with the blue window and
Yeah. So
That's
So-
perfect.
yeah, sure. Get me out of here. All right. And so you guys are you familiar enough with hatching in Illustrator and stuff that I maybe don't need to go into that? So okay. So is that basically? I mean, it's been almost an hour. Do you, any other? I can show you some other stuff about AutoCAD, or I can, but this is the basic.
The laser printers,
Mm-hmm.
they work best with AI file, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, the laser cutter, that's a different story. We use Illustrator to speak to the laser cutters. You can do the laser cutting directly from AutoCAD. That just has not been the way that it's been working in the past.
So
So
what I'm thinking is if I do a file in AutoCAD and then import into Illustrator to print.
you do not need to do that Illustrator import step.
Just a PDF will work for
For
the
the-
laser cutter?
Just an AutoCAD file will work for the laser cutter. So you can open you can, I think AutoCAD is loaded on one of those machines. I don't know for sure that it is, but you can basically open AutoCAD, print to the laser cutter, and you use, so for that, and it's a bit of a different workflow, you use a CTB file, or that's how I've done it in the past. You use a CTB file to you set your intensities, but I think we have that interface software, that driver software for the laser printer that will probably take care of that information as well. It's just that with the support that we have, the familiarity is with the Illustrator workflow, so that we just haven't monkeyed with that yet. Other questions?
I just had a question about the last tutorial that was on Photoshop, if
Yeah.
that was going to be put up on.
Unfortunately, we didn't have this laptop then, and the files were all kind of located on his work laptop, so the answer is no. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything I think is really important for you guys to know. So, how many you guys have been working in AutoCAD pretty consistently? So you're not. Are there any new commands along this list here that you're wanting to know about? Yeah.
I've never done it because I've always done my line weights in AutoCAD, but a lot of people do their line weights in Illustrator.
Right.
So where you have the file linked, can you still edit them? And if you just say you edit them and then you go do something in AutoCAD and you update it or change it.
No, that's exactly the point of this. Is that it's only the PDF that is linked. You can't edit the line weights in Illustrator. You can trace over that if you want. You can even bring in. I mean, if you wanted, you could bring in layers from AutoCAD and scale them over this. But so the other benefit of this is it's at the correct scale. You don't need a monkey with scaling your drawing either.
James, is
Yeah.
this a linked image? Like this is a linked PDF?
Yeah. So the plan that's underneath here is linked.
Okay.
Yeah. So anytime you print to that PDF, it updates this. So basically, as you develop the drawing and lay in entourage and lay in trees and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of times I will like to just work up as much line work as I can in AutoCAD because it's just a faster editing workflow. And then I'll take care of any kind of graphics such as hatching regions or textures or that kind of stuff in Illustrator. Or this kind of neat dot pattern. And then you can even rotate that pattern to not be all screwy. Yeah. And then Leon can guide you as to the correct pen table selection. And I will see about. It's really annoying that I wasn't able to show you how to bring in that CTB file. Let me just see real quick. So I can save as. This is how I'm going to find it. So actually, what I can do here. So this is the secret sauce. So say I had. So I'm gonna do a couple things here. Say all right. This will be a little bit of a step here, but so basically, if I go here and I say save as, I can probably drag, if I had another Windows Explorer window open here, I could drag and drop my CTV file. These are all CTV files. So, and don't ask me what CTV stands for, I don't remember. But, it's a plot style file. So these are like default ones. I made this one, I made this one, so I can drag in a new one. So if I was to go through this, okay, so if I go back, it's not going to, what's the full file path? Whoa, app data, roaming, blah, blah, blah. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this. Let's see if I can outsmart myself here. I'm going to paste it here. I'm just going to give it a new name, LF12. Why not? So can I just so if I had this on my thumb drive, I get to my computer workstation that overwrites everything every time I log off and log back on. But now I'm in my plot styles menu. I just drag that over. Yes, okay. So then you can just bring in your CTV file. You don't need to save it because that's in there. And then I go back and I just cancel that, and then I can go here to the roll down and pick up my CTV file. Yeah, okay, that's what I was trying to do. Okay, great. Well, any other questions? No? All right. Where's my Camtasia? Are we still recording? Yeah. All right.